secretary has to say out there. Let's see what the press secretary has to say. The Biden White House.
First, what is the latest update the White House has received on the current infant formula situation across the country?
Yeah, let me see if I have anything new for you on that.
Let's check the binder. Check the binder.
So I think it's been a couple of days since we have asked that question.
Couple of days. Yeah, checking the binder, folks. It's not manipulated. Still checking the binder. You can hear the binder. Hear them flipping.
I don't have anything new. I know we made some announcements last week. I just don't have them in front of me. But if you want to come back and we'll talk through the things that
she's going to circle back, folks.
What's she going to do? The most recent activities that we've done.
Yes, Jim Pierre. There she is. That's our new White House press secretary. Welcome to GAMcast for June the 14th. 2022, another scorchingly hot and humid day in hot Atlanta, appropriately named as such. We got a ton to talk about. It's a slow news day, so every other program is taking callers. They're reading emails. We're not going to do that. We're loaded for bear. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about Jack Del Rio. Don't think I was going to miss that story. I've had it in the bullpen. I just couldn't get to it. We're going to talk about the diversity hire at the White House, how awful she is and why she's awful. That's why I started the show with her. I mean, again, before I get to the rest we're going to get to, folks, I say this all the time. While we're talking about January 6th, while we're talking about Jack Del Rio, which are things we should not be talking about, real governance is going on, and it's awful, and it's incompetent. Get the baby formula thing fixed. Okay? Do some real governance. It's a joke. What else are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about Bill Barr. And if you've been listening to this podcast, and most of you have been here from the beginning, we pick up new people all the time. We're starting to pick up some people on YouTube. So those of you watching us on YouTube, welcome. Anyway, we talk a lot about Bill Barr. I was a fan of Bill Barr. He lost me yesterday when we live streamed the January 6th committee hearings, and I'm going to break down Bill Barr. I'm very disappointed, and I would say to the former Attorney General, to the extent, the good thing about the internet is this is here forever, so he may stumble across it someday. I can't, to lose your integrity and sell out like this is just awful. And I'm probably gonna do a single issue podcast on it and drop it up on the Twittersphere or not Twittersphere, YouTubesphere, I guess it is, later. But we've got a few other things we're going to talk about. We shall see if we can get to them all. It is going to be quite a bit. So, folks, this is Jean Pierre, the White House press secretary, is Exhibit A of leftism. She was chosen based not on her qualities, not on her ability, right? She was not judged based on the content of her character, as Dr. King would say. She was judged by the color of her skin. And they've just decided that now they like that color of that skin. Yeah, back the Democrats in the old days, they didn't like it so much. Now they do, right? But they're still using race to divide people and keep power. That's all it is. The bigger problem for us, and quite frankly, she doesn't know it, but for Jean Pierre as well, is that we're all suffering from this because this is not the way in which you build a successful society. So let's get to Jack Del Rio because I can knock that one out real quick. Then we're going to switch to Billy Barr, and then we're going to get to the news of the day. Let me drop that down there. I don't know why that's there. So here is our friend, and again, as you know, I'm a huge Dallas Cowboys fan, and Jack Del Rio spent the majority of his good career when he was actually a pretty good linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. But he's been a very relatively talented coach. He's been a head coach. I think he's now the defensive coordinator for the Washington Redskins. And he had this to say in advance of the January 6th hearings. Take a listen.
I see the images on TV. People's livelihoods are being destroyed. Businesses are being burned down. No problem. And then we have a dust-up at the Capitol. Well, there's nothing burned down. And we're not going to talk about, we're going to make that a major deal. I just think it's kind of two standards. And if we apply the same standard, and we're going to be reasonable with each other, let's have a discussion.
Now, folks, you heard that. Everybody here listening to my voice heard that, and we were like, yeah, okay. Well, apparently Jack Del Rio thinks there's a double standard and thinks we ought to have a discussion and thinks it ought to be the same standard. You're either going to have a January 6th hearing, then you're going to have a BLM and an Antifa hearing, or you're not going to have hearings at all. Okay, you think this is relatively uncontroversial. Well, this happened recently, and, it was controversial. So the next day, I'm not going to play the apology because I'm disappointed he apologized, but he was fined $100,000 by the Washington Redskins. $100,000. Okay? And then there's commentary from the black folks out there that, oh my God, he should, does he realize he works in a city that's 80% black and he can't express that opinion? A, why not? And B, I'm presuming your presumption is that he disagrees with some of the black people. So apparently if you're black, you're only allowed to have one. I mean, the racism, it literally is just dripping. It's like the humidity in Atlanta. If you go outside, you will be dripping in a few moments, okay? Same thing here. It's just we've lost. In fact, let's just get to some of the racism jumping around today. So this is one of these shows out here. So this is a Democratic representative, Jamal Bowman. He's one of these people, again, Mark Elias, who, ranking the people who've done the most damage to America, you got Barack Obama. You will get to people like Mark Elias. It doesn't take too long. He's in the top 10. Okay, you may not hear of him, but those of you who listen to this podcast, you know Mark Elias. He's the Democrat super lawyer. He's been the general counsel for every Democrat campaign, including Hillary's losing campaign in 2016, going back as far as the eye can see. Anyway, what he does now is he's a multi-millionaire. He gets paid multi-millions of dollars because people donate to this stuff. And he basically goes around and he challenges any election law that doesn't basically allow you to vote from your computer, from your iPad. If you can't vote from your phone, he's against it. And that's only a slight exaggeration, right? He wants full mail-in balloting. Like in California, you just walk in, what's your name? I'm Mickey Mouse. Okay, Mickey Mouse, we don't have one here. Well, I'm a new citizen in town. I'd like to register day of. Okay, Mickey Mouse, here you go. And then you cast a ballot. Now, if you think that's not California law, I challenge you to go to Google and pull up California law and tell me it's not. It absolutely is. And that's what he's trying to turn everything into. So in Georgia, where, again, Governor Kemp, I think, said it better when he passed the law, Jim Crow 2.0, he said we made it easier to vote and harder to cheat. So now you get more early voting in Atlanta, enhanced absentee balloting, and you can vote day of, and there are more days. It's just there's no problem voting in Atlanta. And I've shown on this program many a time, black people under this so-called Jim Crow system turn out higher than white people. But that, again, doesn't matter. Why is it none of this matters? Why are we talking about Jack Del Rio? Why is our White House press secretary incompetent? Well, because you're not judged based on the content of your character. You're not based on quality. You're not based on what you can do. There's no accountability. You can just go on a program. I'm assuming, this is MSNBC, and you can say this when asked about what happens if Republicans. Before we do this, I want you to imagine what will happen if Republicans take the House and the Senate in November. What do you think will happen, right? Just imagine, you're probably going to get a tax cut that Biden will veto. You're probably going to get a few of Biden's nominees in the Senate will probably now not get voted up. They'll get voted down, and believe me, they should be, right? You'll see a few things here and there, but the Republicans, they're kind of milquetoast. They don't do a whole lot, really. They're better than the Democrats, but nobody's really cheering them. So here's what he thinks is going to happen. Take a listen.
Should the GOP retake Congress in the fall? What happens to the January 6th committee investigation and its findings? And what might the GOP do or not do with their newly claimed power?
So the January 6th commission would cease to exist. The findings will be completely suppressed and will not be admitted into any further investigations while the GOP will be in power. They would impeach President Biden as quickly as possible, and they will continue to find ways to impeach him going forward. It would also embolden Republicans and the far right and white nationalists across the country to begin to believe that it is their time to not just take power in the House, but the Senate, the White House, and state houses across the country. And we got to understand that this is a group that has been radicalized by the Great Replacement myth and many other things, and have been pushing for violence and pushing for even civil war. So that is what's at stake right now in terms of this election.
So anyway, folks, it's really not funny, but that's how you get to where what Jack Del Rio says is controversial, right? And one side controls the media and they make it controversial, they punish him. So coming back to Jack Del Rio, in addition to the fact that he was mocked and all that and had to pay $100,000 fine, I want you to understand this is how the NFL has gone over the last 10 years. We talk about this all the time. What's the trajectory? Well, the trajectory of the NFL was all of a sudden, and not just the NFL, but all over corporate America, we started with this idea that where, we have a criminal system out there, right? If I go out and I rob a grocery store, or if I go out and I assault someone, or if I do a certain thing, there's this criminal system out there that I'm going to go into, right? And we have public officials, and they're charged with we've got laws, we all know what they are, they're supposed to be applied equally, of course, and then I will be arrested and I will be charged in that. So the corporate America, again, or the elites, they started getting into the culture. Well, you also should suffer some additional and alternate punishment at your job. Now, see, I'm self-employed, so thankfully for me, I don't have to worry about that. But a lot of people aren't that lucky. So it's like, wait a minute. For thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we've had a system where there's a criminal system, you pay in that system, and then your job is separate. Now, I'm not saying that private employers don't have the power to take that into account. Most people are at will. You do. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, why is that a good idea? I mean, why would that be a good idea? I don't think it's a good idea at all. And you see, pretty soon, it was a bad idea to begin with. And then, right, because we've already figured out how the punishment goes. Why are we going to continue to have people being punished? Then you see, well, the NFL decides, oh, well, okay, so they start to, if you get into trouble with a crime, then they fine you in the NFL. Then it became domestic violence. You don't even need to be indicted or guilty. Right? So, and again, when they rework the system and create this additional punishment, they do a whole different system. There's no due process in the NFL. Jack Del Rio didn't get called. Like, if he had been charged with, let's say, for example, he had violated some speaking code, which, by the way, they're not far. In D.C., there might actually be a speaking code he violated there, because I could see them coming up with something, a viewpoint discriminatory code there. But let's say he was charged. Well, under the law, he'd get due process. He'd go down there, he'd be arraigned, he'd be told what he did, he'd be given the evidence against him, etc. But not in the NFL. No. See, we're going to punish you for what you speak, and there'll be no due process. There'll be no appeal. See, if you lose a criminal trial, you get to appeal, right? Not there. And so this is the type of thing. And so anyway, so they started with, if you got convicted of a crime or something, we're going to punish you here as well. Then they added domestic violence, right? Then now they've added apparently viewpoint. If you express a viewpoint out there that we don't like, we have the power to fine you $100,000. And there's no process, there's no appeal, there's none of these protections that you have under the Constitution. They are creating an alternate universe out there. That's why you need to know about Jack Del Rio. So let's get to Billy Barr. Now, I'm a fan of Bill Barr. I always was, and those of you who've been listening from the beginning know that. And I really thought Bill Barr wrote a great memo about the way they were treating President Trump before he became the Attorney General. I thought he did, considering where he was, the hostile environment he went into, I think he actually did a pretty decent job. And so, but, based on his testimony yesterday, again, the testimony was played yesterday. I don't know when he gave the testimony, but it had to be within the last month, because 2,000 Mules was only released within the last month or so. So anyway, here's Bill Barr before the election, talking to one of the talking heads at CNN. Right now his name escapes me. Anyway, here's Bill Barr before the election of 2020. Take a listen.
Mail-in voting is fraught with the risk of fraud and coercion.
But since then,
and until this
administration haven't proved it.
Let me talk.
Yeah, please.
And since that time, there've been in the newspapers, in networks, academic studies saying it is open to fraud and coercion. The only time the narrative changed is after this administration came in. But elections that have been held with mail have found substantial fraud. And
so anyway, there's Bill Barr before the election saying what everyone knows. Okay, folks, don't listen to me. Never trust anything I say. Always check it. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the sources I'm pointing to. I point to left-wing sources, so I'm not distributing. I'm not going and getting Newsmax or something that you might think is problematic. So go look this up. You can't mail in vote anywhere, basically in the whole wide world, certainly the Western world. Europe, they would laugh at you, the suggestion that you should be able to mail in a ballot, okay? They would literally laugh in your face. After the 2000 election, we created a commission of Jimmy Carter and Baker, who had been chief of staff, I believe, under Reagan. And they came up with a study that here's how we can improve our elections after the Bush-Gore, what was it, the hanging Chad election. And even then they said, mail-in, it's too much potential for fraud. They're not saying there will be fraud. They're saying there's too much potential for fraud, right? I mean, the best way to secure elections are to vote in person. We all know that. Okay, now the Democrats, they want to make it easier to vote because their voters are not as motivated as Republicans. This is, again, an uncontroversial idea to be there on Election Day. But the other thing that what we're seeing now, and it's quite clear, is they have these good ground games where they get out voters. Think about that. I mean, you ever hear about the ground game from the Republicans to get people out to vote? I'm not saying they don't do it. They do. But we all know that Democrats have a much better ground game of getting, groups of people. Well, when you have those kind of ground games and those kind of systems, it's easier to say, well, we'll get people out and get them to the polls, and then we'll get ballots and get them to the polls. I mean, it's right there. It's turnkey for them. So Bill Barr, as you know, went before the January 6th witch hunt show trial and sat for them apparently quite a bit. And we've live streamed the first 2 hearings. We live streamed the second one yesterday. It's up on YouTube if you want to go see it. I think it's over like 3 hours because they were late. And then I felt like I had to rebut a couple things they did afterwards. But anyway, you can watch the whole thing there. But part of the things they did was, I think they had a few witnesses in person, but most of them, they played snippets of depositions that they'd had. I mean, I still can't believe this is going on in a so-called free country, but it's just a joke. But anyway, here's Bill Barr speaking to them at one point because they claimed they had debunked, Liz Cheney said they had debunked 2,000 Mules. And so they had, at some point yesterday, played the part where it had been debunked. And it had been debunked by none other than Bill Barr. Now, one of the themes of yesterday's hearing at the Witch Hunt Committee was they used Republicans to rebut Republicans or Trump. Republicans to, and again, I got to admit, I hate it. I mean, don't hate the player, hate the game. It was relatively powerful, but here's Bill Barr. I'm going to play the whole 2 minutes and 20 seconds, folks. If you can't take it, just fast forward and you'll get back to me. But I reserve the right to interrupt him. But I think I'm going to let him play the whole thing. He's going to make 3 points about 2,000 Mules. None of them are true. But anyway, take a listen. Here's Bill Barr.
That the election was not stolen by fraud. And I haven't seen anything since the election that changes my mind on that, including the 2,000 Mules movie.
I don't know why he's laughing.
Maybe you can
it's not funny.
That 2,000 Mules, and people are talking about that.
Well, I mean, just in a nutshell, I just think
okay.
The GBI was...
Let me tell you, this is that's that California lady. I can't think of her name, but anyway, it doesn't matter. That actually was some decent lawyering there because she heard him laugh at it, and she read the witness properly. Now, we don't know whether or not they'd had a conversation before. Given what they're doing, and we have nobody in there, we have no idea whether they sat around, they talked, oh, Bill, what do you think of the 2,000 Mules? That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It's bad. They're 1, 2, 3. So then she knew to say it. I don't know. But it looks fairly genuine here. Like she heard him laughing and she's like, okay, he obviously doesn't think much of it. Whatever I can get out of him is gold. And by the way, since it's all being done in secret, it doesn't matter. If it doesn't turn out well, we just won't show it to the public, right? But anyway, so that good lawyering there from her. He's going to get to the point I want you to hear, though, right here.
Impressed with it. And I was similarly unimpressed with it because I think I was holding my fire on that to see what the photographic evidence was because I thought, well, hell, if they have a lot of photographs of the same person dumping a lot of ballots in different boxes, that's hard to explain. So I wanted to see what the photographic evidence was. But all
right, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. I was going to play the whole thing, but I'm not. So here's the problem with the photographic evidence. There's actually 3 problems here. First and foremost, I'm going to hold my fire. Folks, I don't hold my fire. If there's 1 vote that's fraudulent, 2, I don't. Stop everything. Let's go figure out what's going on. You got a broken system, right? I mean, if you came in the morning to your kitchen or your bathroom and there was water trickling, would you go, oh, well, it's just a little water. I'm not going to worry about this. If it becomes a flood, it's a problem, right? No. The minute you see any leaking of water, you go, nah, this is a bigger problem. It could be a bigger problem behind there. It's going to get worse. So I don't know what Bill Barr's talking about. Right. Now, again, you just heard him a couple of months ago before the election. Okay. Then he says, I want to wait for the video evidence. Well, we had plenty of video evidence, which is problematic in Georgia. Notice he didn't deal with that. Then he also apparently is either ignorant or trying to mislead people. The reason we don't have video evidence is because they didn't keep it. That, again, is a big-time major league problem. one of the deals, and Mark Elias, again, he's a genius at this. He comes in and says, oh, we won't mail in back universal, but we'll agree to all these protections. We'll do a signature match, and you'll have to send a copy of your license, and you start with that, and then you see a couple elections, you go, oh, there was no signature match, and no license. Well, you still got to count the ballot. I mean, just because the person didn't do that, you got to count the ballot, right? No. What are you talking about? We only agreed to mail in with all these, So that's what you're going to see happening there. So I don't know what he's talking about. And again, just so everybody's clear, everybody that had a Dropbox, they were supposed to be monitored so that you could check for fraud. Many states, Wisconsin, etc., didn't do it, right? They just wasn't there. And again, this should be, to me, enough to toss the ballots out, but nope, not at all. And here you have the former Attorney General, a Republican, mocking it. He continues. So that's point number one he makes.
Cell phone data is singularly unimpressive. I mean, basically, if you take 2 million cell phones and figure out where they are physically in a big city like Atlanta or wherever, just by definition, you're going to find many hundreds of them have passed by and spent time in the vicinity of these boxes. And the premise that, if you go by a box, 5 boxes or whatever it was,
it was 10.
A mule is just indefensible.
Okay, so it's indefensible. All right, so here again is another problem. All right, Bill, how about 15? How about 20? How about 25? That's a decent critique. Whether that should be 5 or 25, it was actually 10, right? Now, he also apparently is not informed enough to know that they accounted for that. They checked the data before, they checked the data after. They didn't just go get October and November, right? They went and they got July when nobody was voting all the way up through March or whatever it was. I mean, I haven't seen the movie, but I've read the facts. So they got that. And then if you were doing that same route, it didn't count. It was only if your route changed or you started showing up. Now, I'm guessing, you folks are a lot like me. I've lived in a lot of different cities, growing up, and then I moved to go to college, and I moved to go to law school, and then, I've lived in different locations. I tend to frequent the same places. In fact, if anybody, I probably get into more neighborhoods than most of you do, right? Because I'm willing to branch out, and I go to a lot of different courts and whatnot. But I can tell you right now, I can think of how many different, and again, drop boxes are different than mailboxes. These are not mailboxes. But I can tell you there's no way I go by 10 mailboxes when I drive around. There's just no way. I know which ones I go to, and I know which ones I drive by. And in my daily life, I would not visit 10 in this type of a period. And again, I'm not going to go into it. I thought about bringing up D'Souza, but it would just take too long. I had too much to get to today. But D'Souza basically says they accounted for this stuff. He's also leaving out the fact that not only go to the drop boxes, but they also went to the organizations that they knew were quote unquote getting out the vote. So anyway, he continues.
You're going to have hundreds of this. I mean, I saw one contractor said, we figured out that our truck alone would account for 6 cell phone signals. This was
Okay, contractor alone would account for 6. Well, only is that important because he said 5, because they used 10. So I'm sorry, Attorney General, that wouldn't count. They didn't use that guy.
Kind of contractor, and our route would take us by these things on a regular basis. So I
would have been accounted for.
When the movie came out.
So A, it's not 10, it's 6. B, it was accounted for because presumably they would have gone by that in July, in August, and they would have been tossed out. But anyway, again, I'm going to make a bigger point about how communication goes when I finish this, but it's important to understand these debunks are nonsense.
I think the photographic evidence in it was completely lacking. I mean, there was a little bit of it, but it was lacking. It didn't establish widespread.
Again, folks, I come back to my original point. Okay, you're saying it's lacking. Well, all right, you want more of it. Go frickin' do an investigation. Nobody has investigated on top of this. He didn't pretend to go do it. He doesn't have the power of the government to do it. And Bill Barr's just waving it away like it doesn't matter, like some monarch, like off with his head, off with his head. That's not the way this works, Bill, and you know it. It's just very disappointing.
Illegal harvesting. The other thing is people don't understand.
And this is a big point.
It's not clear that even if you can show harvesting, that changes the results of the election. The courts are not going to throw out votes.
That's the last points he makes, and that is an absolute lie. Okay, if you're watching on the phone on the YouTube right now, you're seeing this. Okay, I'm reading from the Los Angeles Times. It's right up there with the New York Times and the Washington Post. being a huge leftist. Again, anybody knows this story. Bill Barr darn well knows this story. Okay, operative in North Carolina congressional race arrested in ballot harvesting case. I'm reading from, again, the Los Angeles Times. This is February 27th of 2019, right, reporting from Raleigh, North Carolina. The political operative at the center of an election fraud scandal that has engulfed a North Carolina congressional race was arrested Wednesday on charges of illegal ballot harvesting and conspiracy. 4 people working for him were also charged. Leslie McRae Dallas Jr., 63 years old, was accused of directing workers to collect and mail other people's absentee ballots during the 2018 Republican congressional primary and the 2016 general election. It is against the law in North Carolina for anyone other than the voter or a close relative to handle a mail-in ballot, a measure aimed at guarding against manipulation. Okay? All right, sorry, Mark Elias, there are states out here that do this. I know you're working on getting nobody to have that. Anyway, it continues. Prosecutors are still investigating evidence of ballot tampering by Dallas and others working on behalf of the Republican candidate Mark Harris during last fall's congressional election in the mostly rural 9th District, which includes part of Charlotte and extends eastward towards several counties. The indictment represents the first charges in a scandal that has cast doubt on election integrity and will leave a congressional seat unfilled for months. These indictments should serve as a stern warning to anyone trying to defraud elections in North Carolina, State Elections Director Kim Westbrook Stratch said. Dallas was arrested less than a week after the State Elections Board decided that his work for Harris, starting with the primary, tainted the Republicans' apparent victory in November. The board ordered a new election, but hasn't yet set a date. You know why they ordered a new election? Because all those ballots had to be tossed out. That's why they did. And they did a new election. Right, the Republicans still won, but folks, Bill Barr knows this. All right, and it really bothers me when supposedly people on the rational constitutional side come up and flip like this. And I'm sorry you're mad at Donald Trump and whatever happened with Donald Trump. You resigned before he left office. That's between you two. But the Constitution is something bigger. And just to hawk his book and to be popular for a little while or go after Trump, he does that. That is sickening to me. And everybody should be sickened by Bill Barr to sit there and say that, well, just because it's harvested. Well, what the heck are you talking about? There are laws out there. You can't do that. And just as a public service announcement, folks, if you're thinking about giving your ballot to somebody and it's going to be harvested, guess what? It is not going to be counted at all. You should not do that, okay? Anyway, so looks like the last story of the day I have in there for you to keep you up to date and up to speed. Is from a little meme that's out there. And this caught my eye. I'll end with this. It was actually fairly entertaining. I would love to give credit to whoever did the meme, but I can't remember who did it. But anyway, this is a pretty good meme. This is a meme of Biden recently talking about that, well, not recently, it's actually like 5 or 6 months ago. He was saying, remember all those dire warnings that they said would happen if I was elected? Well, look at the way things are. Well, that was about 5 or 6 months ago. And now, anyway, take a listen.
Before I took office, there were a lot of folks out there making some pretty bold predictions about how things would turn out. You might remember some of the predictions. They're coming for your guns, they're coming for your jobs, and they're coming for your freedom. They hate American energy, and Joe Biden will shut it all down. He's going to. That if I became president, Biden's elected, he will wipe out your energy industry. Another prediction, that is my favorite one, I must add, is that if I got elected, gas prices going $5, $6, $7 for a gallon. Flood your communities with criminal aliens, drugs, and crime, while they live behind beautiful gated compounds. They try to take away your gun, Second Amendment, they want to take it away, while they enjoy private security that's fully armed. I never understood that one. To spend trillions of dollars rebuilding foreign nations, fighting foreign wars, and defending foreign borders. So for
Ukraine.
All those predictions of doom and gloom 6 months in, here's where we stand. You want to use the word recession or depression? Think of the single mom struggling to put food on the table each month. It's sad. So
these were all Trump on the campaign trail, by the way.
We could stop it in 30 minutes. When I took office, he finally went outside. He went to get an ice cream. Look, the bottom line is this. I say you're not doing a very good job. Because he can't take any questions now from the press.
anyway, people have been talking about that for quite some time. But that everything, basically what was going around on the Twitter sphere for a long time is that everything Trump said turned out to be true. And now, they apparently have a deal to cut back on Second Amendment rights. Nobody knew about Ukraine 6 months ago. It's come to, every single solitary thing, energy independence, immigration, defending foreign borders, not our own borders, $6, $7 gas. I literally filled up yesterday, most I've ever paid in my entire life, $75. And I buy the cheap stuff. If I had bought the other, it would have been over $85. How much longer until I pay over $100 for a tank of gas? It's literally insane. And I'm in a position where I can afford to do it, because I'm still working. But I can't imagine how difficult it is for working families. And folks, I'll leave you with this. Folks, this is by design. I've told you this before. This is absolutely by design. They have created a situation, and if you think about it, look at everything that's going on. They're elite. Their base is essentially elites, and then the lower classes and minority and people they can get to identify with some whatever ethnic identity thing they want to do. And so what their base is not is absolutely the middle class. The middle class is all of us. You can be very wealthy and be middle class, right? In other words, you just want the rule of law. You want to be left alone. You want the government only to do the things we all agree, firefighting, teaching our kids the basics of, reading, writing, arithmetic, police officers, repair the roads, right? They don't believe in that, right? The government is completely a different system to them, and this is all by design. But anyway, you are now all caught up to date on the news of the day. If you like this, if you're watching this on YouTube, tell a friend, subscribe and share it. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, tell a friend, tell lots of friends, and please give us a review. I hadn't checked to see if we've got any reviews in a while, but they will definitely help us with our content creation going forward. So anyway, if you like the show, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.